I just bought this 2015 Subaru STI at auction, sight unseen, for $3,650. I have no clue if the engine's good, I have no clue if the transmission's good, and I have no clue if the chassis is good. The auction company listed the primary damage as frame damage and the secondary damage as mechanical. They didn't specify whether it ran or drove, and they didn't specify where the frame damage was. I have so many questions about this vehicle, like why was a clean title Subaru STI at auction in the first place, and why did I get it so cheap? Does everybody else know something about this car that I don't? And pulling a Carfax report just brings up more questions than it answers. So let's get this thing up on jack stands so we can start with the good, the bad, and the ugly of my new to me 2015 Subaru WRX STI. Starting with the 4 ugliest parts of this car. I never want to lie to you guys. I have nothing to gain by lying. I want you to see everything I see. I want you to know everything I know. There's only 4 things on this vehicle that would even remotely make me think of frame damage. And I say frame damage in air quotes very, very literally. Starting with the driver's side rear door. Besides this mysterious Audi sticker on a Subaru, we have rust. You can see it's bubbling up through the paint. This should be smooth, just like this section. This bubbling up is rust. And it's really, really bad if we open the door. I can stick my finger in this hole. And we're gonna continue that story on the passenger side rear door. We have the same rust. This one's just a lot better and doesn't have a hole in it. And ugly 3 out of 4 is our trunk. We have the same story. Rust hole, no hole, but rust hole, rust hole. And now let's talk about ugly number 4. The only thing I would remotely consider even close to chassis damage. Our roof line has a little bit of rust as well. Not even on my list of uglies, but let's check out the bottom. Even the underneath of the car is rusty, sure, but anybody who lives in the Rust Belt knows that this is pretty common. This is pretty good. None of this is even soft metal. It's just surface rust. And again, on the driver's side, sure, I mean, it looks ugly, but it's solid all the way back. Sure, the rust is an expensive fix. We have a roof skin, 2 rear doors, and a trunk, but the chassis is fine. It's not gonna fall apart. I personally think whoever inspected this car at the auction yard didn't know that a door is not a part of the frame, therefore there's no frame damage, which also makes me second guess the secondary damage they listed of mechanical. It's all speculation at this point. All we can do going forward is repair what we know is broken. So those are the 4 ugliest parts of the car. Let's go one step up and talk about the bad. And believe me, you're gonna wanna stick around for the good, because the good that I found in this car from the Carfax far outweighs any issue that I've found with this so far. The hood struts don't hold open the hood. The driver's side door panel armrest isn't really attached to the door very well. The center console doesn't really have a latch, it just kind of does whatever it wants. The driver's side seat bolstering itself is fine. We just have some pretty normal wear on the leather itself. I have no clue if you can see this Subaru emblem, and I have no clue if it's normal, but it's really bumpy and wavy. I've never seen that before. I don't know if it melted in the sun or what. Heading back to the engine bay, I see no rust anywhere in here, but let's slow down. We're still talking about bads. The only bad thing I could see up here is our coolant overflow, and our radiator itself is pretty much bone dry. I can't see any coolant in there. Which brings me to the Carfax. I desperately want to tell you about the Carfax. First, let me start by saying this Subaru has 158,000 miles. Another thing that goes on the bad list. A good thing is that the Carfax service history is super full, going all the way back to its first purchase. I think I'm the 5th owner or the 6th owner. Honestly, I forgot. But what I do remember from the Carfax service history is that 150,000 miles, 8,000 miles ago, we have a very in-depth list of services. I have a list of them on my phone because I don't want to miss any, starting from the least cool, we'll say, going down the list to the most cool. At 150,000 miles, we have new transmission fluid, new oil cooler seals, a new thermostat, a new oil pump, a new water pump, a new clutch and flywheel, hold on, it gets better. Timing belt, head gasket, and finally at 150,000 miles, 8,000 miles ago, we have a new OEM short block straight from Subaru. Who would have thought that a Subaru at 150,000 miles would have blown up? That's crazy. Subarus are known to be so reliable. What could have made this boxer engine blow up? So there you have it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly, there's some rust. The bad, we have no coolant in our radiator, and we have a bunch of good things, including a new OEM short block. Now, honestly, none of that list matters if this car doesn't run or drive. I desperately need you guys to know I have no money left. I have no clue why I bought this car. If we dig into this engine and it doesn't run or drive, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
So the first thing I want to do is a compression test, which we need a good battery for. I don't want to spend 250 bucks on a battery yet, so we're going to steal the one from the Chevelle for now. And there's only a couple things you need to do for a compression test. You need to remove the spark plugs, and you want to disable your fuel, besides of course needing the compression tester itself. I usually choose to pull the fuse or relay that controls the fuel pump to disable fuel, but you could also unplug your injectors as an option. Starting on the driver's side, it's way easier to get to your coil packs and spark plugs if you remove your battery to give you more room to work. Removing spark plugs is usually pretty simple on most cars, but not the easiest job on a Subaru. Now, I know there are a lot worse cars than the Subaru Boxer engine to do spark plugs on, but that's not going to stop me from hating it. There isn't much room down there, and having a good variety of extensions is going to be your friend here. I started this job using the 3/8 ratchet and ended up going down to a 1/4 inch ratchet. Of course, downsizing to a 1/4 inch ratchet gives you more room, but usually less leverage too. So maybe start with a 1/4 inch ratchet, and if the bolts or spark plugs are too tight, you may need to size up to the 3/8 inch ratchet, or just get a longer 1/4 inch. Of course, there's 100 ways to do everything, and it really just depends on what tools you have. Then moving to the right side of the vehicle, to give you more room to work, you should remove the intake. Then it's just like the left side. Unplug and unbolt the coil packs, and remove the spark plugs. And luckily the right side of the engine bay has much more room to work compared to the left side. The left side has what's called a secondary air pump, and its main or only purpose is for emissions on cold start. But the tubing for the secondary air pump goes right over the coil packs, and it really gets in the way. And after a little bit of a struggle, we have the coil packs and spark plugs out.
They all look pretty new. I mean, if you have the engine out 8,000 miles ago, I imagine that these spark plugs are 8,000 miles old. But since we have them out, I'm just gonna replace them anyway. The Boxer engine, one of the worst engines to do spark plugs on. Now, if you want to duke that out in the comments, sure, go ahead. I know that there's some V6s, you gotta take the intake off, but my knuckle is just so red from being pressed against the chassis for 30 minutes trying to hand turn spark plugs. I am just a little salty right now. All right, so the bottom right corner here, 15 amp fuse is for the fuel pump. So our fuel pump is disconnected, so we should be able to connect our battery, put in our compression tester, and test away. Again, I stole this battery from the Chevelle. It is temporary. I will buy a new battery. I don't need an Optima red top for my daily driver here. I don't even know if this is gonna reach, actually. Now we just gotta hope with this battery all crooked like this that I can still get down there for my compression tester. Oh, car's coming to life. I haven't heard the car beep before, so that's a good sign. Okay, and we're starting with cylinder number 2 here. That being said, I don't even know if this engine cranks over yet, so this might be jumping the gun, but let's give her a go. Well, let's try that again. My tester popped off. I did not have it on all the way. Okay, attempt 2. We got, let's see, so 5, 10, 15, 20. So we have 105 PSI on cylinder 2. Not super high, but we're more concerned about consistency than it being high. All right, we're hooked up to cylinder 4 now. All right, consistent please. Oh, it's a little high. It's a little higher It's like what, within 12%? Let's do the math here. So our first cylinder was 105 divided by 120. So yeah, 14%. So we're, as of now, cylinder 2 and cylinder 4 are within 14%. Okay, we're hooked up to cylinder 1 here. Okay, cylinder 1. Nice, 125, okay. So we got a pretty big difference between cylinder 2 and cylinder 1, but at least cylinder 1 and cylinder 4 are pretty close. And last but not least, cylinder 3. Okay, before I look at it, dare I say, engine sounds good. I don't hear any rattling. Oh yeah, 125. Okay, so we only have one cylinder that's lower than the others, and that's cylinder 2. And that makes me super, super happy. Pretty even compression between cylinders 1, 3, and 4. Obviously 2 is like 16, 17, 18% lower than the other 3. I'm not gonna tear apart my engine for that. It sounds healthy, I don't hear any rattling. And according to the service records, the block is only 8,000 miles old. I'd hate to put in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month worth of work and thousands of dollars just because cylinder 1 is 18% lower on compression. Now there is one thing that has still got me a little worried. Sure, the engine compression's good, but our radiator is empty. So I think next up, let's go ahead and pressurize our coolant system, see if we can find a leak. So all we have to do to pressurize our radiator system is to have a pressure tester. Pressure tester comes with a bunch of adapters. This one here fits the Subaru. So we take off our radiator cap, screw on our adapter, and now we just pump until we get to about 20 PSI. All right, so I got it pressurized to around 12 PSI. Any higher than that, and it's just starting to leak out of my cap here. So currently it is 647. So while we wait to see if we have any pressure loss, I'm gonna go ahead and spray soapy wooter, as Chris Fix would say, on all of my coolant hoses. And screw it, I'll just throw them everywhere. And we're just watching all of the soapy wooter hose connection points to see if we see any bubbles, besides of course the bubbles from me spraying. Now I know I'm spraying some vacuum lines and some coolant lines, but the car needs to be cleaned anyway, right? Faster for me to just spray everything and look for our bubbles. And 15 minutes later, and we are still chilling at the same PSI. I sprayed every coolant line I could see on top and on bottom. There was some green coolant residue on some of the bottom hoses, but at 12 PSI and after cleaning it, it didn't come back. So I'm not fully convinced that we don't have a coolant leak, but from my first 15-minute test, I don't see a leak. But the feeling of there being a leak is gonna linger because why is the coolant empty? There's still answers to be had. Honestly, I think there's only one way to continue this video. The auction company said that there's frame damage and mechanical damage, and I don't see either one of those. So I went to the auto parts store and bought everything we need, or at least I think we need, to make this my new daily driver as of tonight. We got a new battery, we have power steering fluid, which is actually ATF or automatic transmission fluid, wiper blades, spark plugs, coolant, oil, and I already had a can of mass airflow sensor cleaner. So my new goal tonight, it is 8:42, is to make this a running and driving car. How did I almost forget to bore scope our cylinders? I already have the spark plug in cylinder 1, sadly. We can still check out cylinder 3. And in the spark plug we go. The top of our piston looks awesome. I mean, you know, a little carbon buildup, but that's fine. We can even use the side camera to check out the cylinder wall. And guys, look at that cross-hatching. That looks like a brand new engine block to me. All right, can't believe I almost forgot to check our bore. Glad we did that. We can continue on with our spark plugs. All right, earlier I said that I hate the Subaru spark plugs, and then I thought to myself, maybe I'm overreacting, but I'm not. I still hate them. I take back the statement that they're the hardest. I'm pretty sure on like some Porsches, you have to take the engine out to do the spark plugs, but this is still 0 out of 10. But we're done, so carrying on. Okay, let's see how this oil looks. It should be pretty good. It looks pretty good on the dipstick. Yeah, definitely due for an oil change, but at least it was full of oil.
Now let's wrap up with these new parts so we can drive this thing. I'm gonna pre-fill our oil filter with great success, I might add, then add the rest of the oil to the engine. I don't have time for funnels at this point. All I want to do is turn this engine on. So again, without a funnel, we fill our power steering fluid. Now we can top off our coolant, filling both the top location and the radiator as well. Definitely in the wrong order. You should fill the radiator first. Now we can get our intake back on after we take off and clean the MAF sensor. The intake bracket was missing a bolt, and that's probably what caused the filter to be so bent up like this. So we'll use a thread chaser to clean up the threads and bolt in the bracket, plug in the MAF sensor, and tighten down the hose clamp. Before we put our battery back in, we can clean up this tray. Now we can tie down the battery and hook up the terminals. Then we can put our fuel pump fuse back in and put the fuse panel cover back on as well. And at this point, we should be ready to start the engine. But if the engine runs, I'm gonna wanna drive it. And I don't wanna drive it with these floor mats, and more importantly, I don't wanna drive it with these god-awful stickers on.
All right, just kidding. I can't get the inspection stickers off, but at least I got the titty bouncer sticker off and the Audi one. I don't know what's worse. What do you think's worse? Titty bouncer sticky or an Audi sticker? I'm gonna vote the Audi sticker just because the titty bouncer sticker was so subtle. It was black and you could barely see it, but the Audi sticker was bright red, and then it's a Subaru, it's not an Audi. That being said, I've been holding out on you guys long enough. It's time to start the Subaru. Actually, I should say attempt to start. We're going to attempt to start the Subaru. All right, here we go, boys. Oh no! No, dude! Oh no! Well, that's disappointing. All that work and we have rod knock. 8,000 miles on the engine, rod knock. That's what makes a Subaru, huh? How do I keep buying cars with blown up engines? What's wrong with me? Bro, I don't have room to pull another engine. Look at this garage. And now I bought a Subaru with a blown up engine. Well, on that note, make sure you subscribe to follow along with my mayhem. Leave a comment on what I should do with this thing. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go to bed and contemplate life, maybe a little bit of crying, and I'll see you in the next one.